Ladies and gentlemen, I am accused on the daily of being too negative over The Walking Dead, and I think I need to set the record straight. I have an extremely soft spot in my heart for this show, and as a matter of fact, I discovered the show long before I even read a single volume of the comics. The show is the sole reason that this channel even exists in the first place, and no show on earth has come close to inspiring me to embark on a YouTube career like AMC's The Walking Dead has. And you're right, a vast majority of my videos are negative on the show, and that's because the show has made some poor decisions along the way, which resulted from the writer's room, and it's something that I think needs to be addressed. But with that being said, it's not all that bad. While Robert Kirkman's story is one that I honestly prefer, there are some things in AMC's The Walking Dead's version that I think did better than his. So today, we're going to be looking at exactly what those things are, and it's what we're going to be talking about. In this video, we're going to focus on AMC's The Walking Dead and what it did better than the comics. And before we get into the video, there is this white cylindrical looking button that sits pretty much right under where you're watching this video. It says the word subscribe on it, and I'm just being honest with you guys. It would mean the world to me if you clicked that button. It is free. All it does is help grow this channel so more people could watch it, and it costs nothing. And if you ever want to unsubscribe, you could just click that button again. It's really that simple, but it goes a long way. I really appreciate it. Let's jump in. One of my favorite elements of The Walking Dead in general is how it introduced the apocalypse. I've always been the type of person who wants a story that takes place at the origin of the apocalypse, and while The Walking Dead never really focused on that, we did get some of it from Rick Grimes' perspective early on in the story. Specifically, in the first issue of the comics, we saw Rick, I'm starting at the comics to make a bigger point, but we saw Rick get shot, literally like on the first page, pretty much, then wake up in a hospital and discover the apocalypse. The difference with AMC's version, specifically if you're looking at Frank Darabont's adaptation in season 1, is you have this fleshed out story where we're introduced to Shane, and we see that they're essentially brothers in the police force to begin with before Rick gets shot. Of course, there's that whole shootout that takes place, and then you have Rick waking up in the hospital. And yeah, okay, it's similar in terms of it was pretty much inspired entirely by the comics, but its display on TV was just so wonderful. It really made you feel like you were in this world in a relatively short span of time. It's an example of where you could take one page of something from the comics and make it way more real. It feels better. It just, in every which way, what they did to expand that worked so well. Just having a little bit more time to breathe as the lead character and see this world from his perspective was truly amazing, and I think it's what hooked a lot of people early on into The Walking Dead as a whole. But not only that, it wasn't just the fact that they expanded on that origin of Rick Grimes discovering the apocalypse. It's Shane's overall story in general. The fact that we even got to Shane, the fact that we even got to see Rick and Shane as like one of the first elements of the story, only for it to be expanded upon in seasons 1 and 2 of the show, was just great. Because Shane in the comics was barely a character. I mean, he really wasn't anything. He was in it for a brief period of time. Obviously, he served a similar role in terms of the comics and all of that. But in the adaptation, you could see the bond. You could feel it. And it was just so much better. It made the story have the drama that I think a lot of us want from a TV show that we watch. Shane was a phenomenal character. John Bernthal executed his character perfectly. And the way they expanded it and changed even the way he died was just much better than anything you'd get in the source material. Because in the source material, Carl kills Shane out of the blue because he saw him flip out at Rick. I mean, it was a little more complicated than that. Obviously, he was freaking out at Rick for similar reasons he was in the adaptation. It's just, it was done slightly differently in a way that was great. And of course, at the end, we do see Carl come around and shoot Shane, which was cool to see. So it kind of tied in to the way the comics did it, but it was just expanded upon in a much better way than it ever was in the comics. I'm a big fan of that. And as a matter of fact, while we're talking about characters from The Walking Dead overall, the addition of characters like Daryl, Merle, or even Carol, who did exist in the comics, is just so much better. First off, Daryl and Merle never existed to begin with. They weren't in the comics at all. So their placement in the story, while it was kind of interesting in the beginning, both of them were very grunty, both of them were very angry in the beginning. The way their stories eventually panned out to who they are, it's just, I can't imagine a world with The Walking Dead without them. That being said, if we ever do get a faithful comic adaptation, I'd prefer it to stay faithful and not have Daryl in the story. That doesn't mean I didn't like his addition into AMC's The Walking Dead. He may not be my favorite character, and that's okay, but his addition to the story was just absolutely magnificent. It's the same with Merle. Merle was the same way. And wait, by the way, is it Merle, or like Marl? I don't know how to say his name. I really don't. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. It doesn't just end there though, because majority of the characters also got fleshed out differently. I already mentioned Carol. In the comics, Carol dies very early on. She offs herself by literally just like walking into a walker and getting bit. That's what happens to her. In the adaptation, though, Carol is one of the biggest badasses we have in terms of the story, and there's no debating that. Whether you love Carol or not doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that she is a magnificent character to this day, and I'm very happy that they kept her in the story. While I liked Dale in the comics, I'm also really happy the way Dale's character went out, because I didn't really like his TV adaptation, and I like that they took his story, merged it a little bit with Tyrese, I'm talking about in the adaptation, and they really merged it with Herschel, because Herschel in the comics sucked. He was not a good character in any way, shape, or form. He barely existed in the same sort of way that Herschel in the story and adaptation did. That's because obviously the actor who played Dale wanted off the story once Frank Darabont was kicked out of the production, which makes sense, but also even before then, I didn't like Dale to begin with, so it doesn't really matter that he was gone. And just overall, Scott, who plays him, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but Scott, who plays Herschel, did such a phenomenal job with the character and was just much more lovable than, honestly, Tyrese in the comics, or Dale, I should say. Not that Tyrese in the adaptation was bad, because Tyrese in the adaptation wasn't bad. He was a great character. I just really liked how they merged Dale and Herschel's story. Dale and Tyrese's story with Herschel's character in the adaptation. I thought that was a great thing to do, especially because it further developed characters like Maggie and like Beth. And I really did enjoy that, because quite frankly, Herschel's farm was a part of the story, and it mattered because it brought us Maggie in terms of the comics, but it just felt so quick and just like swept under the rug in the comics. In the adaptation, I should say, I get confused going back and forth, but in the adaptation, it was really nice to see. It really was. I thought they did a good job expanding those characters, even with the addition of Otis and things like that. And even though I'm not the world's biggest fan of season 2, I've been getting a lot of crap for that with my TikTok that I posted recently ranking the seasons. But the truth of the matter is I wasn't a fan of that season, but I did like the addition of Herschel. One thing I didn't like out of all these characters we're talking about, I hated Andrea. So there's that one thing. And yeah, okay. The next thing I want to talk about as far as things that I think the show did better than the comics is Terminus. Because in the comics, Terminus didn't exist. It wasn't there at all. But in the adaptation, this idea of them all getting separated after the prison war and all of that stuff was really nice, because they met at this central point, which was built up for the entire season. In season, I think it was season 4, not the entire season, but majority of the season was built up to them trying to meet at one central location. and Terminus was a great way to bridge the cannibal storyline from the comics into this big grandiose thing. And while it was very short-lived, like they got to Terminus and then they died, like all the characters in Terminus died, which was pretty great. I just like that they built it up in the way they did, and it led to a phenomenal episode in season 5, episode 1, and just beyond, when we finally got to Father Gabriel's church and they showed up there and all of that stuff. It was just magnificent. I even like how they kept the original Dale scene from the comics, but changed it to Bob with the whole tainted meat thing. I liked that. In general, I liked that they fleshed out this group of cannibals way more than they did in the books. It worked so well. It was one of the most iconic moments in the show, and it's something that I think we all look fondly on, and it barely existed in the comics. Speaking of things that barely existed in the comics as well, another thing is Morgan Jones. He was obviously big in the comics in the beginning, but after the whole Clear thing that happened, he was just kind of gone. Like, I forget. Honestly, this is how little of a character he was in the comics. I don't even remember how he died. I know he died fairly early on in terms of the story. I just don't remember when or how, because it was that forgettable. But Morgan Jones, in terms of The Walking Dead, I'm not talking about Fear, I'm talking about in terms of The Walking Dead, was just such a well-written character, because he was one of the only examples of the ramifications of the apocalypse in the story. Everyone else just turned into this hardened badass, but Morgan didn't. Morgan was all over the place. He was psychotic, he was sentimental, he was confused, he lost his family, he was mad, he was happy, he was everything. And that's exactly what I'd imagine would happen to a lot of people in the apocalypse. That's real storytelling, and that's what I loved about his addition in the show. That's why he's one of my favorite characters. Not because his story was straightforward, but because it wasn't. That's what made it work so well. And I loved every minute of it, and majority of it didn't even exist in the comics. Those are some of the greats. Those are some of the best things. And there's a lot more. I'm going to talk about a few, but I'm not going to talk about them as long. Those were my biggest points. The rest are just smaller things I want to mention. Making the governor a more fleshed out character, and one who isn't just like an angry pirate like was in the books, was a really nice thing. Also, season 9, episode 5, despite us losing Rick, it was a wonderful episode. It really was. It was a great episode of TV, and that's something I also look fondly back on. This is going to be a contentious one, but season 8 of The Walking Dead, I didn't mind. I hated, obviously, Carl's death. That's obviously not a positive of AMC's The Walking Dead. But season 8 I did like overall, because I liked swimming in the all-out war story. Was it a little boring and have pacing issues? Yes, but I liked that arc a lot. It was my favorite arc in the comics, and I think they did a decent job of turning the story into this all-out war in the show. So it's not the best, but it's something I did want to mention. I also liked the way they wrapped up the story in season 11. I don't think it was the best ending to a show ever, but I like the way our characters left off. Obviously, without Rick, it's different, but I think they did as good of a job as they could, even though it was pretty much a commercial for the spin-offs. I thought where they ended our characters that we followed by the end in season 11 was pretty good. So those are some of the big things. There's a couple more that I'm definitely forgetting in there. I guess I could count all of season 9 as being much better than what we got in terms of the comics, but those are the ones that come like fresh to mind. There are definitely more, but these are the ones that stand out to me. I would love to hear, if you've read the comics, or even if you didn't, I'd love to hear your favorite moments from AMC's The Walking Dead, because there is a lot that AMC's The Walking Dead did right compared to the comics. So in good faith, I cannot say I dislike The Walking Dead in any way, shape, or form. I understand entirely that it's been perceived that I'm overwhelmingly negative on the show. I see it, I understand it, I talk about things that I care about this universe. So that's why you see a lot of the negative stuff, because if I talk about all the positive stuffs, if I talk about all the positive stuff, quite frankly, it's a little boring. I'm just being honest. Not like I make these videos only to be, angry all the time or whatever. That's not what I'm getting at. It's just, I have more to talk about things that I think the show could have improved upon. And if we ever see a remake of The Walking Dead, these are things that I think are important to see. It is my favorite show in a lot of ways. It may not be my favorite in terms of like the cinematography being the best, even though they did shoot really well and I liked the filmography and all that stuff. But it may not be my favorite in terms of like the writing, the cinematography, the acting, even though I thought the acting was great. But it's my favorite show because it has a sentimental value to me. Nothing's going to change that. And while I think Better Call Saul is like the best show of all time, The Walking Dead has a special place in my heart that no other show or medium can have. So no, I don't dislike the show. I'm not trying to be overwhelmingly negative on it. There's a lot I really did like about it, and I think it deserves to be talked about. So with all that out of the way, again, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram and X because I post there all the time. And with all that out of the way, thanks again so much for watching this video. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.